Hello and welcome to the Ivy and the Arch podcast, a Major League Baseball podcast with an emphasis on the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals. My name is Aaron. I'm joined by Caleb as always, and this is episode 5 of the podcast, a really big week that we just had and a really big week that we have ahead of us as we are entering the final week of spring training. Opening day, I believe, is Thursday of this coming week. Roster decisions are being made left and right, including a pretty big significant one that all Cardinals fans should be over the moon about. Caleb, how are you doing today?
Aaron, I'm great, man. This is the last Sunday without baseball
Oh my
for
gosh.
the next 7 months, so
I know.
couldn't be better.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm ready to get, I think not only is the baseball fan in me ready to watch baseball, but I'm also just super hyped that we'll have a lot more to talk about on the podcast in the coming days and whatnot. Yeah, I'm ready for baseball to be here.
I'm with you, man. It's best time of year, hands down for me.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
Warmer outside, no
Yes.
more
Oh
snow.
my gosh. I'm here for it. I'm ready for the boys to get out of Arizona back into Chicago, and I know we're opening the season. I think you guys are opening in Toronto, and we're opening at home against the Brewers. A couple interesting
They
notes.
are
Yeah.
Cardinals are home actually,
Oh, are
but
they? Oh, okay.
Toronto's coming here. Yeah, because I'm
Interesting.
very tempted to go next Saturday.
I don't blame you. I would. I would. Bush on opening day sounds like Bush and Wrigley both opening day sound like quite the places to be.
Had someone offered me tickets for Thursday for Wrigley, but they
Ooh.
were they were so expensive. It was
Yeah.
behind the third base line, but
Yeah.
I think they're 150 a piece.
Mm. Yeah, that's a little
I
pricey.
love baseball. I couldn't justify it for neither of my teams.
Yeah, I will say, and Cubs fans that are listening, I'll probably get crucified for saying this. I've been to Wrigley a couple times. I've been to Busch, more than I have Wrigley. I love Busch Stadium. I love Ballpark Village. I love how easy it is to get around there. I love all the options in Ballpark Village for food and whatnot. It's a great baseball atmosphere, and then also just ticket prices. I mean, you can get into a Cubs Cardinals game for a fraction of the price at Busch than you could at Wrigley. And to me, that's like I'd rather drive the 2 hours south to Busch and St. Louis than the 2.5 hours north to Chicago and have to deal with Chicago traffic and whatnot. But I'm excited, man. Opening day for both teams. It's best time of the year.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right, let's get into it.
Cool. All right. Well, Caleb, you have quite the more impactful news than I do from this week of spring training camp. So why don't you lead us off here and tell us what happened in the Cardinals world down in Jupiter?
Yeah, we got a few things to go over. Some mostly some finalized roster spots, some shifting of players, some surprises there, and even an extension. So let's get into it. Um, as Aaron alluded to in the intro, Jordan Walker is in. He did make the opening day roster. That, of course, is at the expense of outfielder slash DH Juan Yepez. And also sent down to AAA along with Yepez is Genesis Cabrera, Dakota Hudson, he was optioned last week, and Jojo Romero, who was kind of a bubble guy. Romero kind of surprised me because we have the one lefty starter, and we had Romero was one of our lefties in the bullpen. So um, I'm going to go over here in a few notes of who the lefties are in the bullpen, but that's one less option. It surprised me that they're willing to go that low on lefties. So those guys are out. Uh, Mason Wynn really forced their hand this spring. He has been one of the most remarkable players that stepped foot on the field this spring, along with Nolan Gorman. Taylor Motter had a really strong spring. He made the team kind of in place of Yepez's role. He'll be one of those rotating, if anybody gets hurt or a late inning or a late game pitch hit option. But Mason Wynn just missed it. I actually think he is like a Tommy Edman injury away from being called up immediately. That's
Yeah.
how close he was. So
Wow.
I don't wish anything bad on my boy Tommy Edman, but um, if you go down your starting shortstop, I think he's ready.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see if he'll get some playing time this year. I think it would take an injury or a major trade. As mentioned, Taylor Motter made it in, so he's a third baseman. He can play second, and he could DH for you as well. So he's slotted in along there with Brendan Donovan. They do have kind of a surplus of infielders, and we've been talking about this for a while, but I wouldn't expect any regular playing time. I just think he had a hot enough spring that he's your guy you're going to roll with for the next month or two.
Yeah.
In Adam Wainwright's injury, Jake Woodford took the fifth starter role. So you had a couple options there between Matthew Liberatore even Zach Thompson. Jake Woodford has a lot of big league experience. He's kind of my go-to guy if you need a piggyback starter, if somebody goes down in the first couple innings. Woodford was always kind of that guy. So I'm excited to see how he does in the fifth spot. I think he is definitely ready for it. There's not a question of his age or experience. So that rotation is going to slot out at Miles Michaelis, who's actually your opening day starter, which surprised me. Jack Flaherty, I believe, goes the next day. Um, and then you got Steven Matz, Jordan Montgomery, and Jake Woodford as your fifth starter until Wainwright gets back. Speaking of Michaelis, he secured a 2-year, $40 million extension. I saw a lot of rebuttal on Twitter about his AAV for this at 20 million each year. For reliable innings, man, we saw the price jump this offseason
We
with some of
did.
the deals that Verlander signed, um, just a couple years ago with what Max Scherzer signed for with the Mets, what Jacob deGrom just signed for. Mike Lewis isn't on these guys' levels, but he's making about half of their AAV. So
Yeah,
I'm actually pretty happy with what he got there. Um, couldn't have asked for worse. I don't know if you can hear that rain, but it's like pouring.
pouring. Just a little bit. I think I
So
heard it, but yeah, no, we're nice and sunny down here, so
cool.
I don't envy you.
And my computer station's kind of right by my window here. So sorry about that if you're picking up some rain there. Hopefully it dies down. So in the bullpen, some decisions in place of Genesis Cabrera and Jojo Romero. Um, Packy Naughton secured a spot, so we picked him up last season. He came in some high leverage roles, and he ended up doing okay. And then Zach Thompson, who is a starter. Obviously, a lot of these guys who are young as starters, when they don't have a spot, they get their start in the bullpen.
Hmm.
So we'll see him used. He's one of those lefties that is going to come in and take the place of Genesis Cabrera and Jojo Romero. This is interesting. I didn't think they were going to address this early. I know they only have a few days to kind of figure it out, but Oliver Marmol, the manager, he came out and said that Dylan Carlson will be used as a DH, rotating outfielder, and pinch hitter to start the season. So he is your odd man out.
Wow.
If I had to guess, um, you're looking at Lars Nootbaar in left field, Jordan Walker in right field, and Tyler O'Neill in center field. So Tyler O'Neill, he had a really good showing in the World Baseball Classic for Team Canada. I think he hit like 600 and a couple of home runs, and then he came back to camp and talked about how he was disappointed he couldn't do more. I know he wanted to advance in pool play, but Pool C, which is what the U.S. was in, it was just kind of a hard pool to pass through, especially with the way that Team Mexico played. So that's your starting outfield. I could see Walker and Lars flipped. I just think that left field is the more demanding position with, the majority of the league being right-handed hitters. And then I think you're looking at a Andrew Kisner. He beat out Trace Barrera for the backup catcher position. So Andrew Kisner, Alec Burleson, Taylor Motter, and Nolan Gorman on your bench. Um, I do give Brendan Donovan the start over Gorman. I know it's going to be different every day because if they want to get Edman off his feet, Donovan would just slide over and start at shortstop. But that is your bench at the moment. Other than that, Aaron, that's kind of the main major roster moves. Um, the roster was finalized today. Names were put out. I told you about all the potential surprises or anything you didn't see coming. But that's pretty much it in the Cardinals world.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about Jordan Walker. He just seems like I've said it before how the Cardinals can just seem to pull a random name out of AAA and he can come up and demolish the Cubs every time they play. But this is a different kind of feel because Jordan Walker is established and we've seen what he can do not only in spring training but in the minors last year. So I'm absolutely terrified of what he's going to do against the Cubs this year. And I wanted to bring up one point to your Michaelis contract talk about all the criticism on Twitter. So there were a couple free agent pitchers that signed deals this offseason. Taijuan Walker and Jamison Tyone are two that I can think of, but I'm taking Taijuan Walker, for example. He signed a 4-year, $72 million contract, which averages out to about $18 million a year. Michaelis's is about, what, $20 million a year? It's 240,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to compare the last 2 years of Walker and Michaelis's ERA is actually about zero point 0.5 lower. Granted, he started probably about 15 less games, so that may play a factor there durability wise. But I mean, underlying numbers, it's seemingly there's spots where he may be a little better than Walker, given he is also older. But, for the Cardinals in the position that they were in, they needed to have some stability going into not only this year, but to know that they're going to have another dude in that rotation guaranteed next year. And $20 million dollars for a guy who's going to go out and give you 20 to 30 starts is probably the going rate for pitchers in this new market that we're in. And to get a guy like Michaelis, who's familiar with the culture, familiar with the staff, familiar with everything about the Cardinals organization, to lock in guaranteed that $20 million dollars a year, that's not going to hinder the Cardinals in any way, shape, or form. It's going to just all it's going to do is just give them the depth that they needed, this year, next year, and the year after that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it was a good move by the Cardinals. I liked it. I wasn't really surprised at all by the number. I thought they were going to maybe give him 3 or 4, but 2 seems like a good middle point. Was there an option year tagged at the end of that? Do you know?
I think so.
Okay, so it's just straight 240.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good.
Which is great. I
Yeah,
mean, I could also, let's put it this way. If you had told me it was Jordan Montgomery, I wouldn't have been any more upset.
yeah,
Uh, I think having seen Montgomery a lot less than I've seen Michaelis, I'm more comfortable giving that money to Michaelis.
right, right.
But, it, if the end of the year Jordan Montgomery is extended, I wouldn't be shocked.
No,
So,
no, and it's I mean, Michaelis gave you 32 starts last year for a 3.29 ERA and over 200 innings pitched. So
right.
locking up that for if you're guaranteeing yourself 180 to 200 innings out of Michaelis if he's healthy for 20 million a year, you take that every day of the week. I mean, that's a no brainer to
Absolutely.
me. No brainer to me. So I'll move on. I got a couple player notes I want to touch on before we get into kind of some of the roster decisions from the Cubs. Jameson Taillon had a nice, strong spring training start on Tuesday against the Royals. 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, and 9 strikeouts. So he's looking sharp. His ERA isn't where we would want it to be in spring training, but he looks ready to go for the season, which is what we need. We need all of our rotation guys healthy. Hayden Wesneski was named the 5th starter officially. Adrian Sampson was optioned to AAA, and Wisniewski was given the 5th starter spot. Thursday against the Diamondbacks, he threw 5 innings, 4 hits, and 5 strikeouts, no earned runs allowed, which is good to see him bounce back from adversity after that kind of rocky start he had with the Dodgers. I think this was really a no-brainer for not only David Ross and Jed Hoyer, but in the minds of all Cubs fans after the spring that Wisniewski had, that he was going to be that 5th starter in the rotation. I was intrigued to see whether or not they were going to keep Sampson on the 26 man, maybe as a swing man in the bullpen, kind of like how you were talking about Woodford being a piggyback guy. Sampson could easily be that piggyback guy, but they optioned him to AAA. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Keep him stretched out as a starter in case you have an injury. I'm thoroughly excited for Hayden. He has been great all spring, great last year. I'm really excited to see him have the confidence of knowing that that 5th spot is his to lose, and I don't think he's going to lose it whatsoever. And speaking of Wisniewski a little bit, he helped Marcus Stroman lock in his slider. Stroman, after a start on Friday against the Rangers, where he went 5 2/3 innings, 5 hits, and 5 strikeouts, did a little media session and said that Wisniewski, he had talked with him to help lock in his slider. And I mean, I don't know if any of you Cardinals fans have watched any clips of Wisniewski's slider on Twitter. It is filthy. Disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the single best pitch on the entire Cubs staff is that slider. And the fact that Stroman, who's a veteran in this league, is not afraid to go to a guy like Wisniewski when he sees something working so well like his slider and go to him and ask him to help tweak his. If we can get Stroman's slider even on the same playing field as Wisniewski's, that's a ground ball machine. And with the up the middle defense that the Cubs have this year, look out, look out. You're going to want to keep the ball in the air, opposing teams. Don't let it go on the ground because it's not going to end well for you. Sampson, quick note on him too. Like I said, he was optioned to AAA. He had another rough outing Friday against the Guardians. 5 innings, 7 hits, 3 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. 2 of those 3 earned runs were home runs, bringing his spring training total to 11 home runs allowed and 17 innings pitched. Just big number. And, if it had just been a 1 or 2 game thing where we saw him give up a few long balls, I wouldn't really be concerned. I don't think he's hurt. I just think something mechanics-wise is not right. Hopefully getting him settled in at AAA will help him figure out his groove, because he can be an effective, 5 inning guy if you need somebody to spot start. But I'm not really encouraged by his spring training whatsoever. Like I said, I hope he figures it out in the minors and comes back up and can give us something if we need it. Quick note on a bullpen guy. He was one of our swing starters last year, Mark Leiter Jr. He was up a lot based on just injuries or a need to spot start in a doubleheader or whatnot. He's had really good spring training. He's got a 150 ERA in 6 innings with 9 strikeouts. He's in line for a bullpen role this year. I don't really think we'll be seeing a whole lot of him swing starting or starting any games, considering we have Javier Assad in the bullpen. Alzolay can go. Keegan Thompson, if he's up, can give you a spot start. I think Leiter's pushed back in that line, and the way that he's been as effective as he has been this spring training, I don't really want to see him spot start. I'd rather keep him in the role that he's grown comfortable with at this point and let him see what he can do straight out of the bullpen. So I'm liking the way that the bullpen is shaping up so far this spring. Leiter Jr.'s been really good. We've seen Alzolay. He's been really good. Fulmer has been really good. There's just a lot of good guys in the bullpen that I've had really solid springs that have made me look forward to seeing them shut down late innings this year, which is something we haven't really seen outside of maybe Brandon Hughes last year in the Cubs bullpen do. So that's a really positive note I'm taking into the season. A couple of player notes, just 2 positional player notes. Nick Madrigal, his batting line this spring as of today, and I'm not counting anything he's done in today's game if he's playing. He's hitting 250 with a 302 on base in 43 plate appearances this spring. I'm kind of worried a little bit that he has not looked like the classic Nick Madrigal that we've seen when he came up with the White Sox. He was a very much so a high contact, high on base guy, didn't strike out a ton, and in the small sample size that we've seen him give with the Cubs last year and into this spring training, the walk rate just isn't there. The contact rate isn't what it used to be. And if he's not the same player that he once was, and if we're expecting him to play a totally new position that he's never really played before and expect him to be in there for his bat, it makes me wonder if there is talks to start him in AAA for the year and maybe keep Morel up. I've been on the train to start Morel in AAA, but if Madrigal's not hitting the way that he's supposed to, his hit tool is the only reason he's got a roster spot right now. That's it. That contact tool is the only reason he's up here. And if he's not putting that on, I don't see a need to keep him on the 26-man, especially when you've got Rios, who you signed as a kind of a flyer guy. He's been playing well, hitting homers, playing solid, defense either at first or third. I don't know. I think we might see him start the year in AAA. Wouldn't be mad at that. And the other guy playing third this year, Patrick Wisdom, had a really, really, really nice spring training. He's hitting 333 with a 436 on base percentage and 39 plate appearances this spring. He does have a 33% strikeout rate, which is par for the course for him. If he can keep that anywhere between 28 and 30% this year, I'd be happy with that, with the power that he can generate. But he does have 6 walks on the spring as well, so I'll give him his credit. He's taken his plate appearances in stride, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do this spring. A couple general notes. Marcus Stroman was named the opening day starter for the Cubs this year, which I didn't really expect it to be anybody else. I thought maybe Steele after his performance last year, but Stroman is the obvious choice there. And he seemed very happy about that. I'm happy with that, especially against the Brewers. You want a guy out there who can set the tone early and keep the ball on the ground.
Yeah.
Seiya Suzuki is moving up to normal batting practice in cages. There's talks that he might be back sooner than expected. Definitely not ready for opening day. Probably not for the first few weeks of the year, but anytime maybe before May or right at the first week of May, I'd be happy with that. Getting his bat back in the lineup is going to be huge for this team. Kyle Hendricks, his rehab is going really well. He has a couple more bullpen sessions scheduled before advancing to live batting practice. He was quoted saying that he feels like he's on a normal spring training workup rather than injury rehab, which stood out to me. I figured at this point he was still on that rehab train where he's just building his strength back up, getting a feel for being on the mound again. But for him to come out and say that he feels like he's on a normal spring training schedule, albeit not at the same time frame as the team is, that gives me thought that maybe we might see him rehab a signing in AAA, AA, probably as soon as the end of April, May, whenever the minor league season gets up and going. He'll stay back in Arizona for extended spring training. But yeah, if we can get him back sooner, the more depth, the merrier, in my opinion. Couple notes left in the roster cuts. So on Thursday, Nelson Velasquez, our outfielder, was optioned to AAA. A couple other guys were reassigned to minor league camp, and they'll be spaced out to the affiliates here. Some notable names: David Bodie, who he had a great spring training. I thought he was going to make the roster, but they have other plans for him. He's not on the 40-man. That may have played a role in it. the fact that we have guys like Miles Mastroboni and Zach McKinstry who are currently taking a 40-man spot. McKinstry seems like an obvious DFA candidate, but we have guys who are going to be making the team who are going to need those roster spots, like Edwin Rios, for example. I thought Bodie was going to make the team. It'll be interesting to see how he starts the year at AAA. I don't really see him as a trade candidate at this point. I only really would have saw that if he had been still in camp at this point. Matt Mervis obviously reassigned. He's not going to start the year in the majors with Hosmer and Mancini and Rios and Wisdom being able to play first base. Manny Rodriguez, hard-throwing reliever, never really had success in the majors so far, reassigned to minor league camp. And then, like I said earlier, Adrian Sampson option to AAA on Saturday. 39 total players left in the Cubs camp at this point. They're going to need to trim that number down to 26 by Wednesday, I would think. I don't think they'll push anything to Thursday on opening day, but I think by Wednesday we'll get a pretty crystal clear of what the 26 man is going to look like to start the season. And that is all of the Cubs notes that I have. I'm like we said when we started this episode, I'm super excited to get into actual meaningful baseball games and see what this team can do on the field.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to touch on real quick is going over some of the impressive stats from the Cubs Cardinals players in the World Baseball Classic. We had a plethora from each team that represented their countries. It was a really cool thing to see. I'm just going to go through a couple of them here. Javier Assad, who was in the mix to be the fifth starter along with Wesneski and Sampson for Team Mexico. He went a total of 5 2/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 6 strikeouts, and no earned runs allowed. Really good showing from him. Stroman for Team Puerto Rico, 9 innings, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, and 4 strikeouts. Another good showing for Puerto Rico, which, again, that was a team that I was surprised they, didn't advance a little farther. But credit to him. He pitched well. He fired up the team. He was a fun watch. Let's see. Who else here?
Cool.
Adam Wainwright, 8 innings pitched, 10 hits, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts. The 10 hits was something that, I was wondering what his total was when I was looking up these numbers, because we did see him get knocked around a few times, but he always seemed to escape the jam, as shown by those only 2 earned runs there. Strong showing from him, and it's kind of a bummer that he's not going to make the opening day start for the Cardinals this year. But I don't know, what is his injury timeline? Do you know how quickly they expect him to be back?
I've not seen that. But I do know it's a groin injury.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's. I feel like I saw 2 weeks on that.
Oh, wow.
Google's saying between 10 and 20 days.
Okay, so I know Patrick Wisdom was supposed to start spring training a lot earlier, but he ended up having to come in, a week or two into spring training after having a groin injury. So yeah, maybe a week does sound about right for that return there. But he was impressive in the World Baseball Classic. Michaelis for Team USA as well, 6 innings, 9 hits, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts. Another example of a guy who kind of got knocked around a little bit, but limited the damage the best that he could. Lars Newt. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, both on Wainwright and Michaelis, that first game for them was a little bit tougher because they both pitched. I think in that first game, at least Wainwright did. And then in that semifinal game where Wainwright started and Michaelis basically finished it off except for the 9th inning, Wainwright had that bases loaded situation with no outs. I wonder how many of those were hits, because I know one ball was an error. One ball rolled right under his glove. I don't know if they ruled that as an error or a hit. And then Michaelis was pretty much perfect the rest of the tournament except for his first appearance.
Yeah.
I think that's when he gave up those hits in his run.
Yeah. Yeah, both Cardinals pitchers, I mean, they showed out well for a Team USA staff that really needed guys to dig deep and keep the bullpen out of the game as long as possible. A couple of the Cardinals players here. Lars Nootbaar for Team Japan. Newt. He became an overnight sensation in Japan and became best friends with Shohei Ohtani, which is incredibly sad for me. He ended up going 7 for 26, 6 walks, 6 strikeouts. He had a 424 on base percentage for Team Japan, so good showing there. Played really good center field defense. Tommy Edman for Team Korea. They did not have a long run in the World Baseball Classic. He went 2 for 11 with 2 strikeouts. Nolan Arenado, the man, the myth, the legend, 10 for 26. That's good for a 385 on base percentage, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. He was just so fun to watch in the Baseball Classic.
I think you called him gritty.
He
That's
is a
like the
gritty
perfect
player.
term for him.
I just every time I see him in the box, the look that he has, the way that I think it was in the championship game or the semifinal game when he like check swing to hit all the way down the right field line for I think it was it a triple? Did he get a triple out of that? Um,
Yeah.
he that was gritty. That's the definition of gritty right there. He digs in and he plays the game with such passion and just smoothness to him. He's one of my favorite players, even if he's on my least favorite team. His partner in
It's one of my
crime,
favorites.
yeah, I would hope so. His partner in crime, Paul Goldschmidt, went 7 for 25. It's good for 280 batting average, one homer, 7 walks, and 7 strikeouts. So relatively good all around there. And then Tyler O'Neill really balled out for Canada, right? He was playing for Team Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went
Yeah.
8 for 13 in Canada's short showing. 613 batting average there, 5 walks, 4 strikeouts. Just great for him. Great performance all around for him. And then I just wanted to touch on, I think that's all the notable Cubs Cardinals players that ended up playing in this classic. I just wanted to touch on Shohei Ohtani for a second, if I can. What we've seen from him all the years that he's been in Major League Baseball thus far is, there's little words left that we can use to describe him. What he did in the World Baseball Classic for Japan as a hitter, he went 10 for 23. That's good for a 435 batting average, a 606 on base percentage. He had 1 home run, 8 RBIs, 10 walks to 6 strikeouts. And on the flip side of that, as a pitcher, 9 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, and 11 strikeouts. It's incredible what he did, being able to start a game and then DH. It's just he is such a freak in the best way possible, and I am so intrigued to see how the season plays out for him and how this offseason goes if he's no longer a member of the Los Angeles Angels. That's going to be such a fun storyline to watch.
And now I'm curious where, I mean, if they're not in it, you have to trade him. You can't hang
Right.
on to him when he's clearly not going to stick around. And I heard on I frequently listen into Talking Baseball and Baseball Today from John Boy. I heard them say that Artie Moreno had his first like media appearance in like over 2 years, and he was asked if they had extension talks with Shohei, and he just said not at this time, and that's like a week and a half ago. It's
Yeah.
like, man, if you're not going to sell the team and you're not going to extend this guy, okay, if you're going to make a run for it this year, that's great. But if you're 10 games out, 15 games out by the trade deadline, are you just going to sit?
Yeah, they
And
can't.
like, do they even get a pick if he denies a qualifying offer?
Yeah, they would get a comp pick if he declined the qualifying offer. But at that point,
Breaking news, no comp pick will be Shohei Ohtani.
no, not in the slightest. And here's the other thing they have to realize too: you're not going to replace him with the haul you're going to get. You're not going to be able to get the same quality of player in return. And that's the other thing that intrigues me is the prospect return for him. We saw that massive haul that the Nationals got for Juan Soto last year, who's a super young generational all-star talent with multiple years of control left. Shohei Ohtani is a free agent at the end of this year, so you're only getting 2.5 months maybe or 2 months worth of Shohei Ohtani. That's what, probably 10 starts maybe. No, not even. What would that be? Yeah, 10
That's I
starts.
just don't see anybody other than a leading true World Series contender because it's still probably going to cost them a top prospect.
Oh yeah, and that's where I've seen on the rumor mill already. The Padres are a name that's frequently mentioned because they're not afraid to go out and you know get guys that they want that we've seen them do the last 2 years. I don't think they're a player in the trade market at the deadline this year. I think they'll be a big player in free agency because they just print money now. If they were willing to offer Aaron Judge $400+ million,
Hmm.
but they don't have the prospect capital to get him. The Dodgers are a team that has the prospect capital to get him, but if they're not the clear cut favorite in the West, do they really push that hard when they could just sign him for money in the offseason?
They're a few games back. They have the prospects to spare. I could see it just to get a head start,
Yeah.
hopefully get in his ear. I think he obviously likes the West Coast and the big spotlight. And the Dodgers aren't going to be a team who has to rebuild,
Yeah.
like ever. They're always going to be competitive.
I think we can also rule out Houston as a potential destination for him because Jordan Alvarez really shouldn't be playing in the outfield. They could theoretically put him out there in left field for the last 2 months of the year so that they can have Otani DH. And I guess that would really, that would be 3 out of the 5 days of the week, maybe 4 out of the 6, however long they're playing for, that Otani would be at DH. But they have the pitching prospects that the Angels would want in a return for Otani. But I can't see the fit there. Seattle's an interesting one to me out there in the West if they're truly in it. But then again, I don't think they could stomach trading within the division. We can probably rule out an AL Central team. We can probably rule out an NL Central team if the Cardinals aren't willing to part with certain prospects for him. That
It'll
doesn't,
cost them, and they're
yeah.
not going to do that.
The Braves, I can rule them out confidently. They have a bottom 5 farm system this year in all of baseball, and they're not probably willing to part with any of their major talent in order to land him for half the year. Mets are a pretty intriguing choice with their prospect depth. It'll be interesting. We'll go into that more as the season goes along and we see how the Angels are playing out.
I think it's Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, unfortunately, and the rich get richer. But I think those are your 3 teams who have a legitimate shot at trading for him.
Yeah. I will say one sleeper team I could probably put a pin in right now, depending on their season performance. I'll give it 2 sleeper teams. Toronto. I think Toronto is a sleeper team. And the Rays. If the Rays are in it, they've got the pitching capital to go get him. They've got the availability at DH. If they're in it, I could really see them making that move to try to not only bring some fans to the ballpark, but if they're in it in the AL East, that's those will be my 2 sleeper teams. I'll put a pin in those. We'll come back to that here in a couple months. Just a couple MLB notes real quick. I would like to walk back my NL MVP pick from Juan Soto and give that to Trey Turner. At this point, just seeing, he homered in his first at bat back in the Philly spring training camp. He's just been on an absolute tear, and it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Philly's got such a steal with him. Corbin Burns hired Scott Boras. Don't know if you saw that. So
Yeah.
my prediction that the Diamondbacks or another team would acquire him and extend him at the deadline, that's out the window because no Scott Boras client is going to sign an extension before free agency at this point. And Luke Voigt officially opted out of his minor league deal with the Brewers. There's a lot of speculation on whether or not he's going to end up in Philly with the Rhys Hoskins injury that I'm going to mention here in a moment. I don't see the fit there. Power-wise, sure. But the Phillies are already a bad defensive team, and you're going to give a contract and a roster spot to a guy who would probably hit around 220, 230, give you a little bit of pop, but then play atrocious defense at first base. I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. I think the Phillies are going to end up with Eric Hosmer here in a couple weeks, personally.
Do you think it would suit them better to? I don't know. I know it's not easy to teach somebody first base, but I just feel like Kyle Schwarber was almost born to play first base.
He tried that in Boston. Didn't really go well. I don't know if you remember that when he was acquired by the Red Sox at the trade deadline. It didn't really go great at first base in the playoffs. So he maybe could down the line. I don't know. I think keeping him in left is probably the play for now. But, worst case scenario, he has technically played there before. So you could put him there. I know Nick Castellanos was up as a third baseman when he was a prospect with the Tigers. So he probably could, in theory, play first. I don't know if you would rather have him be in right field or at first base. Defensively, you're not going to be great either spot. But it's not like, for me, with Harper coming back as a designated hitter, you don't really need to move somebody from the outfield to get him plate appearances at this point. So their best bet is probably to bring in somebody who they know can play first base.
Yeah.
I don't know who that's going to be. My bet is Hosmer, but it could just be they'll roll with what they got for now.
I just think you have a huge skill gap between bringing in Luke Voigt and bringing in Hosmer.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Unless, I know Hosmer has a chip on his shoulder. I know he wants to show that he still has some left in the tank. That might contribute, but I think we would have seen that this spring if that was the case.
He's hitting like 270 something, I think, in the spring training. So, the bat is still somewhat there. And he's a former Gold Glove winner at first base. And I'll say that with a grain of salt because Christian Yelich was a former Gold Glove winner and he can't make a competent play in left field to save his life.
Hey, so was Marcell Ozuna.
Yep, Marcell Ozuna. So I don't know. I don't think Hosmer's going to last long on this Cubs team, and I do think he'll eventually end up in Philly at some point this year. Back on the Rhys Hoskins, just another awful non-contact injury. He was fielding a ball that was bounced over his head in shallow right field when he came down on his left knee and could put absolutely no weight on it. He tore multiple ligaments in his ACL, and he'll be out for the entire season. So that's a huge blow to that Phillies team. You know, Reese wasn't going to be the savior, but he was supposed to be a productive bat in the middle of that lineup, play solid defense at first base, and give you 260, 270 batting average with some pop. You know, I walked back my NL MVP pick to Trey Turner. I might walk back my NL East pick to the Braves at this point. I don't know if I want to do that yet, and I'm honestly almost leaning towards the Mets now. I was looking at the Braves rotation depth chart, and it's not looking super pretty behind their first three. Same with the Phillies. I didn't realize the back end of their rotation wasn't great, especially with Ranger Suarez being out for a little bit now. I feel like that division might be a little more open for the Mets now this week than it was last week.
It's a tough division, man. I'm just personally I'm done doubting the Braves until they give me a reason to doubt them.
Right.
I do
Right.
it every year, and they continue to win the division every year. So
I'll probably hold my pick with Philly because when I do think when Bryce Harper gets back, he's gonna put that team on his back again. But I'm very much more so open now than I was last week. And then I have a slight update here on Jose Altuve. He had surgery on the right hand that was broken in the World Baseball Classic. It's going to be 2 months post operation before he can even resume baseball activity. So it's not we're going to see him back with the Astros in 2 months. It's going to be 2 months before he can even, start practicing baseball again. So in my opinion, we probably won't see him until June, mid June maybe,
yeah,
depending on how his rehab goes. Which I was surprised the Astros didn't make a move this week to replace his bat and glove in that lineup. I don't really know how they can roll with I believe David Hensley is his name, the replacement at second base. It's going to be interesting. I don't know what they're really going to do long term here.
yeah.
The Braves optioned Vaughn Grissom to AAA to start the year. That was a shocker to me. That I thought Vaughn was going to take that starting shortstop gig and run with it, but he, optioned to AAA over Orlando Arcia at shortstop. I'm going to pull up the Braves depth chart here while I talk about this, but yeah, no, that one really surprised me. I thought, they needed kind of their young guys to take a step up this year between him and Michael Harris in center field with the departure of Dansby Swanson. But it looks like Arcia is going to man shortstop for the time being, and Ihidre, I'm going to butcher his name. They've got a Ihiri Ari Anza, I butchered that so hard, is the backup shortstop. So, I mean, Grissom's there in AAA if they need him, if somebody's really struggling. But I don't know about you. I was shocked when I saw that. I thought he was going to be making the opening day roster.
I was surprised. I saw a lot of overreactions on Twitter, of course, from Braves fans. Shouldn't have let Dansby go.
Yeah,
Blah 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 blah. You you weren't in a position to pay Dansby that money that he got from the Cubs.
right.
Just be patient with Grissom. Honestly, I mean, I think it just shows that they're a little bit spoiled. The Braves have had so many good prospects come up and be the guy they're supposed to be between Acuna and Ozzy Albies and even Michael Harris.
Yeah.
Spencer Strider,
Yeah,
one of the best
another guy.
pitchers in the league last year. Just be patient.
Yeah.
Just let him develop. It will happen. He will come up this year. He will be the guy he's supposed to be. Just because it's not on opening day doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
And you know what? That may be good for him. Not having the pressure of being the guy to replace the franchise cornerstone for the last several years. That might be good to get him some reps first and then bring him up when he's a little more comfortable.
Because, I mean, you have the Braves have been good for a while. They've been on a solid run, but this, when they won the World Series, it kind of started this elite run of baseball they've played, and it was really just Freddie. Acuna was just getting started, and it was Dansby.
Yeah.
Like they started this kind of, really good roster. They were kind of the start of it.
Yeah. 100%. I just want to briefly touch on MLB sent out a memo to teams that they clarified a couple of the rule changes. I just want to touch on these briefly. One of the things they clarified was on brushbacks and aggressive swings. If a batter is brushed back or knocked down by a pitch, what they're calling the field timing coordinator, which I'm assuming is somebody assigned to every game, operating the pitch timer will delay the start of the timer until the batter has a chance to gather himself and return to the edge of the batter's box. Pitchers covering first base and backing up third base or home plate. If the pitcher leaves their position to cover one of those bags, the FTC will delay the start of the 30-second between batter timer until the pitcher returns to the infield grass. If the catcher is on deck, ending an inning on base or on deck, the home plate umpire will determine whether the catcher requires additional time to get ready. And if they make that determination, they'll give a little extra time on the clock before the pitch clock starts running. They emphasize that clubs need to really hammer into their bat boys and bat girls that they need to be quick and effective in delivering balls to the umpires and retrieving equipment from their players who are on base. Batter timeouts. Batters will continue to be permitted one timeout per plate appearance. The memo clarified that when a batter has used his timeout, the timer will restart when the batter returns to the box. If the umpire will determine a batter has used his one timeout whenever the batter steps out of the box after entering the box and becoming alert to the pitcher. And other than that, they gave a couple other rules on the pitch com malfunctions. They'll give a little extra time if the pitch com is malfunctioning between the pitcher and the catcher, and shift restrictions. So they touched on replay reviews. Defensive team may always ask to review an umpire's decision that the defense did not comply with the shift restrictions rule. However, the offense may now only review the umpire's judgment with respect to the infielder who was the first player to touch the ball after a pitch. So, for example, on a ground ball to the shortstop, the offensive team could only ask for a review on whether the shortstop was in violation of the shift rule and would not be permitted to review whether the first, second, or third baseman violated the rule. So basically, they've got to pick a guy who they're pretty confident violated the rule and go with that. It can't just be a catch-all if everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is that on my general MLB notes for the week. For all you viewers out there who have listened to this point, we want to thank you again. I didn't do this at the beginning episode, but I wanted to thank everybody for all the support we've gotten. It's been tremendous thus far, and we hope to continue doing these, and we hope that you continue listening to us ramble on about our two favorite baseball teams. So Caleb and I are in a fantasy baseball league, and we just had our draft this past Friday, and so we wanted to take a little segment to overview our teams. Caleb, I'm going to start with you. I believe you had the last pick in the draft. Is that right?
I did, which was, I don't think I've ever been in that situation, so it was kind of fun being able to plot out two moves in a row with the snake format.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got my app pulled up here. Should I just walk through?
Yeah, just go ahead
Or
and walk through. It was an 8-team league, so we did 23 rounds for the draft. Kind of go over your guys and any surprises that you were shocked that fell to you, any picks you were really, really happy about getting at your spot.
yeah, okay, that's a good idea. All right, so my catcher, I think I was the first person in the draft to take a catcher.
You
I
were.
did get Real Muto. I think I took him in the sixth or seventh round. Um, First baseman, I went with Pete Alonso. Second base, I went with a really surprising rookie last year, Andres Jimenez. Um, and he's got, I will say with some of these positions, I was shocked at how Yahoo has them listed. I assume
Yeah,
they're going to be updated. Just for example, though, like Jordan Walker's listed at third base, so
right.
that's something that's going to have to get cleaned up. Um, Nolan Arenado, I did take him early. It wasn't in the first round, but it was with my first pick in the second round. I'm just very high on him this year. I wanted to make sure I got him before our friend Jack, also resident hardcore Cardinals fan. We usually have some inner competition to take the Cardinals we really want. So I was afraid he would take him if I didn't snag him soon. Shortstop, I went with Houston's young sensation Jeremy Pena. Outfield, Mike Trout was my first pick. I was shocked he fell to eighth. I know there's some really good players in this league, but as far as I can recall, Mike Trout has either been the first or second pick in every single draft.
Yeah, this was the first year. It was kind of weird that he fell as far as he did, at least for us.
Yep. So I took Trout. Second outfield spot, I went with Michael Harris, the second. In my third outfield spot, I currently have rostered by Luis Robert, which I found out now goes by Robert Jr.
Hmm.
So I will probably never say that, but
No,
it's right in front of me. So,
that's like
uh,
Clint Frazier wanting to go by Jackson the last couple years, and I guess he's back to Clint now. So everybody's been calling him Clint this spring. So I don't know if that was he was just mad at the Cubs and wanted to get some attention. I don't know what it was.
in my two utility spots right now, I have Angels outfielder Taylor Ward and Boston's rookie outfielder Masataka Yoshida.
Mm.
So those are currently rostered, and I have a lot of outfielders, so we'll say that. So we'll see how long that holds up. My three bench spots right now, and obviously when he's back from suspension, he'll be starting. But Fernando Tatis Jr., I took a little bit early.
Seventh
This
round.
is a similar situation to when you took Bryce Harper.
Yep.
Spoiler alert. I was considering Harper because I knew he was going to be back at some point, but with Tatis um, already rostered, I was afraid that I'd be stuck with two guys who couldn't even play for a month. So,
Yeah.
good call on the Harper pick. I think that you will not end up regretting that.
I hope not.
And then my other two bench spots, Cody Bellinger. I'm kind of foreseeing a big comeback year. I think it'll depend. He will either lead that Cubs team to a surprising season, or if the team around him is not playing well, I think he's going to get them a huge haul at the deadline.
Yeah.
So, um, Cody Bellinger and then Jordan Walker, I took with one of the last picks in the draft, and I'm
Mhm.
glad I did because he made the team.
Yeah, that was a smart play.
My rotation, the one I took first was Spencer Strider, and then I got Zach Gallen, Tristan McKenzie, Pablo Lopez, and Jack Flaherty. Um, and then to round that out, my bullpen is David Robertson, Jorge Lopez, Jose Leclerc, Andre Palante, and Michael King.
Solid all around. All around
Yeah,
solid.
and that's no major surprises. Like I said, I just had to plan out in advance, and then I'd have a lot of time. It was what 14 picks in between my two picks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was the thing too. With I've picked first and I think I've picked last before too in the years we've done this. And it's nice having those two back to back picks, but at the same time then you're watching forever and watching all these guys fly off the board and a lot of your choices go down the drain. So you really when you're in those positions, you got to make those two picks really count for your guys.
I think Harper was one. You just kept stealing my picks, man. Harper was one that you took, and then right before you took Wesneski, I was going to draft him with my next one.
I was so
Mostly to bug
scared.
you, mostly to hold you ransom, to hold you ransom for
Yeah.
something.
I had thought about drafting Jordan Walker earlier, but I didn't have the
Yeah.
guts to pull it with the other guys that were left on the board. I was glad I was able to get Wisniewski. I got him in the 19th round. And I was worried there was a couple other people in the league. I was worried they were going to take him. Chase, I thought he was going to pull the trigger. Fellow resident Cubs fan, shout out Chase. Um, I was glad he fell to me though. Interesting enough. So one thing to note: we're doing Yahoo this year for our fantasy baseball league instead of ESPN. Yahoo has Shohei Ohtani split as two draftable players. So one version is a pitcher, one version is a hitter. I made the rule as commissioner this year that if you take Shohei Ohtani either form with one pick, you have to take the other version with your other pick so as to keep him on the same team. And so that was going to be interesting. I didn't know how that was going to affect the draft, how far he might fall, because you're basically committing two picks in a row to one player, albeit in two completely different roles. My brother had the first overall pick, took all the intrigue out of it, took Ohtani first overall. So I had the third overall
Yeah.
pick. I was really, really, really hoping once I saw that Ohtani went one, I was really hoping that Trey Turner was going to fall to me at three because our friend Michael, I had no clue what route he was going to go. He did end up picking Trey Turner second overall. So I had a choice on my hands there. And I kind of maybe went with a bold pick. I'm banking on a big year from him. I took Julio Rodriguez with my first overall pick in the draft. I'm not mad about it. I think he's going to have a great year. I think the speed's going to play. I think the power's going to play. I think the contact's going to play. Good all around. My only disappointment in this draft is I had a huge brain fart. I took Machado in the second round, right? And then my third round, I took Devers. I already had a starting third baseman. There were other players on the board that I could have taken in the third round. I don't know why I took Devers. I missed out on guys like Garrett Cole. I missed out on like Jordan Alvarez, Vladdy, or Austin Riley, a guy like that. Pete Alonso, missed out on him. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking there. I did. I guess I think I was thinking that Machado was still a shortstop, and that was my logic in taking Devers. But flawed logic there. So yeah, just quick overview of my team. I got Sean Murphy as my starting catcher. Took him pretty late in the draft. When did I end up taking him? Yeah, the 21st round, so third to last
You
pick.
got him surprisingly late.
Yeah, I was surprised he fell. I mean, there were some other obvious choices: Contreras, Perez, Will Smith, JT Romuto. All those guys went off the board relatively early. I wanted to wait on the catcher position because there's always a couple guys who play well that fall. So Murphy's my starting catcher, and my backup on my bench is Cal Raleigh of the Seattle Mariners. He's going to be good this year, I think. Matt Olson is my starting first baseman this year. Jake Cronenworth of the Padres is my starting second baseman / utility guy. He's listed as he can play first, second, and short, so I can move him around as I need to. As I said, Machado is my third baseman. I drafted Wander Franco as my shortstop. I think I had him last year too. I'm banking on him to build on his rookie year last year. My outfield is Julio Rodriguez, Corbin Carroll, who is my pick to be, and I think both of our picks to be the National League Rookie of the Year. No, you picked Jordan Walker. My pick to be National League Rookie of the Year. And Chris Bryant. I wanted to pick him this year. I was glad he fell to me. I think I got him in the 12th round. Yeah, 12th round. I think he's going to have a huge bounce back year in cores. That ballpark will play so well to his strengths, and he's going to play. He's listed as an outfielder. I don't think he'll be playing a lot of third base this year, but it's nice to have him kind of slotted in there. My two utility spots went to Rafael Devers and Ian Happ. And then my bench, as it stands right now, is Bryce Harper, as you alluded to, which he fell. I don't know. I honestly think people thought he was going to be out most of the year and didn't take him. I saw a tweet before the draft that said that the Phillies weren't putting him on the 60-day IL, which means that he could
Yeah.
return as soon as the end of May. And so I was surprised he fell as late as he did. I got him in the 20th round. When I saw that he was still on the board, I was praying that nobody else saw that he was still there as well. So snagged him. He'll be back sooner than most people expect. So it's Harper, Nico Horner, and Cal Raleigh is my bench right now. My rotation, I don't want to be biased, and I'm going to sound biased when I say this. I think I have the best rotation in the league. Alek Manoah, Luis Castillo, Dylan Cease, Sandy Alcantara, and Hayden Wesneski. Wesneski obviously is, you're banking on him to have a good rookie year. I was so glad he fell to me 19th round. Yeah, 19th round. But that's a powerful, high strikeout rotation right there for fantasy. I was so happy with those picks. I ended up getting Sandy Alcantara in the 4th round, Cease in the 5th, Manoah in the 8th, Castillo in the 11th, and then Wisniewski in the 19th. And to round out my bullpen, Josh Hader of the Padres, David Bednar of the Pirates, Gregory Soto of the Phillies, Jason Adam of the Rays, and AJ Minter of the Braves. It was a fun
Pretty
draft.
solid.
Yeah, it was good. My bullpen, I'm pretty happy with. We got a couple guys in there who are gonna, lock down saves for their teams all year, and a couple guys in there who are gonna hopefully provide some big strikeout numbers. So I'm happy with it. I think the draft was all around good. We did lower the time this year between picks. It's always been a minute 30, and I lowered that to a minute this year. I think that helped the draft move along a
Felt
little
so
quicker. It did feel
fast.
fast, but
Which
then
I'm not upset with it at
no,
all. It just I feel like I would think about it and I would it was pretty much always between two guys. And I'm
yeah,
I'm like, okay, it's this guy or this guy. And then it's 10 seconds left. I'm like, oh, I gotta pick somebody.
gotta pick him. Yeah, no, it was good. I'm excited for fantasy to start. I'm excited for baseball to start. And speaking of baseball starting, to round out this episode, we are going to go over our season predictions for the Cubs and Cardinals, respectively. We're going to go over our projected win totals for the teams, who we think our team's MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year will be. 5 predictions for the season for the Cubs and for the Cardinals, and then I wanted to throw in one trade deadline prediction. So this is completely abstract. It's probably not going to be anywhere close to what it will be, but we're each going to give a little bit there. Caleb, I'm going to let you go first here. What do you think the Cardinals' predicted record is going to be this year?
I gotta be honest, man, I'm high on this team. Higher on this team than I have been on a Cardinals team in a while. I think they have. I saw it was the Score app. They sent out like one reason to be excited for every team in the National League, and they had said this is the best Cardinals lineup in the history of the franchise. I don't know if that's true, but this is definitely the
It's a bold
most
statement.
expected offensive production they will have from the catcher position. Um, I think you have Nolan Arenado in his best years, and Paul Goldschmidt at the back end of his best years. I think you have a really good chance to make some noise this year. And I know we got some big boys in the rest of the division between the Padres and the Dodgers and the Braves and all that stuff. But I'm high on this team, so I got them finishing 97 and 65.
Wow, that is high. 97 wins. That hasn't happened to the Cardinals since I believe 2015. 3 NL Central
Mm-hmm.
teams finished with,
They won
95 plus
100
wins.
games in 15.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would say this roster is better than the 15 roster just on paper.
Absolutely, and that team. I mean, they had a lot of luck going for them. This is this is the most solid roster I think since at least 2013.
Yeah, it's solid up and down. For the Cubs record prediction, I'm going to take the passive side here. I want to be proven wrong on this, but I also want to get a prediction right. So I'm gonna go passive here. I think the Cubs are gonna finish 82 and 80 this year. I think they'll be above 500. 500. Um, I probably should have given them a couple more wins here because I do think they'll be better than the Brewers this year, and I don't know if I think the Brewers are going to be. I don't know. I've said the Brewers are going to have a fire sale at the deadline, so they may be worse than this. I think 82 and 80 is a solid range for them to be. Puts them above 500. I think this will put them in a position to move guys at the deadline on expiring deals and bring some players in for the long term. I think it's a safe pick. I think that's a step forward for this Cubs team to move in the right direction, especially approaching next year. With some of the prospects should be more ready at that point. 82 and 80, I think it's good. Nowhere near the 97 wins the Cardinals you think are going to get, but yeah, I think that's a pretty safe pick. 82 and 80 seems like a good middle ground for this team. And I think I'll pivot here to the team MVP. My 2023 Chicago Cubs team MVP is going to be Nico Horner. I think he's primed for a huge year if he can stay healthy. I'd love to see him hit above 300. I'd love to see that defense just shine at second base with Swanson next to him. I think he's going to be, you could pick Suzuki here if he's healthy. You could pick guys like Cody Bellinger. You could pick Ian Happ. I think he needs to break out and be a star in this league, and I hope the Cubs get a chance to extend him before he has the year that I think he's about to have.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no surprise on my end. I mean, this is the guy I picked for my overall MVP. So Nolan Arenado is my 2023 Cardinals MVP pick.
Cool. Yeah, that's super safe and probably will happen.
I think it's a definitely good bet. You could definitely make the case for the reigning MVP with Paul Goldschmidt. I just think that Nolan's going to have a better year. So going into my Cy Young prediction, I think we're going to have a giant bounce back year in a walk year, and you don't know who I'm talking about because there's three of them in walk
It's
years.
true.
But I'm going to go with Jack Flaherty for my
Ooh,
Cy Young pick.
okay. I like that.
I think he has a solid year. I think he's going to fish a huge deal from someone, probably not the Cardinals next year. In order to do that, he's going to have a pretty solid season. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody listening and you probably knows who my Cubs Cy Young this year is going to be, but I'm gonna ride the hype train until it falls off the rails. Hayden Wesneski is going to have a huge year. I can't be more hyped for him. I think he's going to have a way better year than any pitcher in this Cubs rotation, and I hope by saying that every pitcher in this Cubs rotation has a good year, but Wisniewski just shines above the rest. I think if he comes out and throws the way that he's been throwing the spring training for 150, 170 innings, he's going to shine. I would not be shocked with a sub 350 ERA. I would not also be shocked with the sub 330 ERA with the way that he's been throwing the ball. Hayden Wesneski, 2023 Cup Cy Young, bold, bold, bold take. 2023 top 15 Cy Young finish.
I got to be honest, I would have went Stroman.
That's safe pick. Safe pick, but I like Wisniewski. I like everything that he's doing, and I'll ride that train till the rails fall off.
I love it. So is he your rookie or
no? I consider him a rookie, and I could slot him in here with that. I'm gonna go with Matt Mervis though. I think he's up by May or June. I think the hype is real from what we saw last year from him. I think he finishes with a really strong year, 20 plus homers in the majors this year. I like what I've seen from him. I don't think he's going to be down long. So I'm going to pencil in Matt Mervis as my 2023 Cubs rookie.
in order to do that, you'd have to either move Mancini or play him somewhere else. What do you think happens?
You play him somewhere else, especially if Suzuki's not super healthy yet. You can rotate him in right field. You can play him at first, because if Mervis is up, Hosmer is not on this team. Period. I mean, it makes no sense to have them both there. So you either platoon Mervis with Mancini, or you let Mancini DH and let Mervis play first, vice versa. You've got that versatility there, and you can play Rios or Wisdom at third, depending on that scenario matchup wise. But yeah, I think Mancini, he's going to be slotted once Suzuki is back and Mervis is up for that rotating first base DH slot.
Okay. My rookie pick, I think you all know it's going to be Jordan Walker, but I'm going to throw a wrinkle in here. If you do have an injury to an infielder and you have a Mason Wynn called up, I don't think he's going to take. I feel like that Walker is pampered for this. I think Wynn would take advantage of that and have the more impressive season.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only reason I didn't pick him is because I'm not certain that he makes it up with all the people blocking him. So if you have an injury and you have a spot open for Wynn, he's my pick.
I love it. I love it.
But it's Walker. It's Walker until then.
Yeah. 100%. All right, rail off your 5 season predictions for the St. Louis Cardinals team.
Okay, all 5 in a row.
All 5. Lay them out there.
Let's do it. Tyler O'Neill. He's going to return to 2021 form. We're going to have 40 home runs from him. He's going to crack 40 homers.
40. He's going to have to
Hey,
stay
you got
healthy.
my predictions, man.
Yeah, I'll
They're
lay off.
they're no. I'm saying for these to come true, or for you to get 97 wins, these have to come true.
It's fair.
So
It's fair. Go
I'm
bold.
usually pessimistic about this team and reserved about this team, but I want to be a little bit aggressive today.
Go bold.
You're gonna have 3 starters: Miles Michaelis, Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty. They're all gonna have an ERA at 3.5 or under.
Okay.
Nothing crazy, but you got to have that if you're gonna have 97 wins. They can't be getting blown up.
Yeah.
I think this team has 6 Gold Glove winners on it. Do
Arenado,
you want to?
Goldschmidt,
Yep,
Edman,
yep, yep,
Newtbar.
yep.
Are you counting Walker?
Nope.
Okay. Arenado, Goldschmidt, Newtbar, Edman. Who am I missing? Donovan?
Super utility.
And who's your starting left? Carlson? No, Carlson's pinch hit. Who's your?
That's with Lars winning the left field one.
Oh, so then Carlson in center.
Tyler O'Neill.
Tyler
in
O'Neill.
center.
So you were just talking about it. Yeah, Tyler O'Neill. Wow. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. You have a great defensive team.
He
But
just won one in left field.
yeah,
Donovan just won one at super utility. Edmund did not win one, but he had the really unfortunate spot of playing like 100 games at short,
it's true.
50 at second, and like 10 in right field. So
Wow.
he wasn't really in a clear spot to win that. I actually thought he deserved super utility over Donovan, but I'm not going to discredit
Yeah.
Donovan's. I just thought that I think Edmund's the better defender. I think you have Dansby Swanson as Edmund's biggest competitor, so I could see 5 happening without Edmund there, but or even Trey Turner. But
Yeah.
I think you have at least 5 personally. But
Yeah.
I'm going to go bold 6.
Wow. That would be something.
All right. With Edwin Diaz out, I think Ryan Helsley will lead the NL in saves. I think he had a really good year last year. Obviously, the best in his career. I know he wants his extension. I know he feels burned by that arbitration process. And we're talking about a guy who throws 100 gas and has some really nasty put away stuff. So Ryan Helsley is my NL save leader. The Cardinals' first NL save leader since Trevor Rosenthal in that very 2015 season.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
I think he had 48 that year.
Wow. Now that's interesting too that you predict this team to win 97 games and your closer to lead the league in saves. With the offense that this team can produce, do you really think there's going to be enough 3-run game differences for him to reach that save plateau?
Hope it's one or the other.
Yeah. True. That might be one
Hope
prediction
or
you want to
the
be
other
wrong on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And some of these could contradict each other because if I'm predicting my 5th prediction, which is Matthew Liberatore being one of our best starters by September, I'm not going to throw numbers out there. I'm not very good with predicting like specific ERAs and all that stuff. But I'm going to say come September, you're already talking about like what's our lineup for the NLDS or whatever it might be. What's our rotation? I think you're going to be throwing around Liberatore's name as one of those guys.
Wow. I wouldn't be surprised. I think this is probably his year to show that. He needs to take that step
But if
forward.
that happens, you might not have all 3 of Michaelis, Montgomery, and Flaherty. I just think these are 2 things that could happen. Hopefully one of them happens.
For sure. For sure. Those are all good predictions. I like those. I'm going to get a little bit into the numbers with mine here. My first bold prediction for this Cubs season is that Nico Horner will hit above 300 and have 10-plus home runs. So I think the bat's going to come to play this year.
Slugger.
Yeah. I think the bat's going to come to play this year. I think he's going to play great defense. I think this is the year we finally see him break that 300 number for batting average, and I think the power is there enough to where I could see him clubbing 11 or 12 homers this year. That's not going to be his calling card, but I do think he's going to have a pretty big year, so I'm willing to bet on that. My second prediction, Hayden Wesneski, going to ride the train. I'm going to keep talking about him all year long. Just deal with it. Cubs fans, Cardinals fans, anybody listening. Hayden Wesneski is going to win 10-plus games and finish with a sub-340 ERA. And I would even be willing, if we're doing bold bets like you did, I'll switch that to a 320. I think he has a 320 or lower ERA this year. I would not be surprised. I'm hoping to see that, even if it's 330, 340, 350. That's still more than you could ask for from Wisniewski, but I like the stuff so much.
That would get him that would get him some Rookie of the Year votes.
That would, yeah, because he's eligible. So
Yeah.
let's knock that out, Hayden. My third prediction is that Christopher Morel will be up for the rest of the year by May, and he'll finish with 2.5 WAR or more, playing in a super utility Edmund type role, filling in all around the diamond. Hopefully more
Yeah.
so third base than anything, but I think if he figures it out the first month of the year, I think he's going to be a piece for this future contending team. This is a more somber pick, but I felt like I needed to have one in here. I think Cody Bellinger only slightly bounces back this year. I think he hits 250 to 260. I think he hits 20 homers, but I don't think he's anywhere near the Cody Bellinger that he used to be. I think those days are gone. Um, and I think he's very above average, but still way less than what everybody wants him to be. And I'm fine with that for the reason being I want to see Brennan Davis get regular at bats on this team. I want to see if Pete Armstrong is playing really well in August or September in the minors. I want to see him up for the late stretch of the year. And if Bellinger is slightly performing well and those guys are ready, Bellinger becomes a trade option for a team who could use a power bat in their lineup. And I know you took him in fantasy, so that one is probably not one you wanted to hear, but I just think that's kind of the direction that he's trending this year. My last prediction here is that I think Albert Alzolay will become the Cubs closer very early on in the year, and he'll finish the season with 20 plus saves. So I'm not going to go NL saves leader, but I do think Alzolay is going to be that guy now. I think he's done with the spot start. I think he's done with the long relief. I really would like to see him in the back end of that bullpen. The stuff is absolutely filthy. I think he has the makeup to be a really dominant closer in this league, and the Cubs need somebody like that. I don't want to ride the carousel of free agent closers. I want somebody who knows the system, knows the staff, and who can anchor the back of that bullpen for years to come. So Alzolay, closer, 20 plus saves to end the year. I
I
like
love it.
I like how we both finished with closer predictions. It's pretty good. All right, last little tidbit of predictions here. Caleb, one trade deadline prediction for the St. Louis Cardinals. Go.
Struggled with this one. Um, I have kind of two routes you could take with it. They will trade for either Shane Bieber or Shane McClanahan. And I
Okay.
think the return would vary because Shane Bieber has a lot more time left than McClanahan. Um, I think if you go after a Shane Bieber, you are only going to end up giving up, or I'm sorry, Shane Bieber, you're going to end up having to put up either a Nolan Gorman. Um, oh, I misread that. McClanahan has
Yeah.
more.
Bieber's got this year, next, and then he's a free agent.
So flip that. McClanahan would cost he'd fetch a higher price.
Hall.
So I think you'd have to put up a Nolan Gorman. I mean, obviously they're untouchable as Jordan Walker.
Right.
I know they really aren't racing to trade away Mason Wynn, but outside of that, I think any of those guys, you have some starters you can move. Um, Pink Hens, Gordon Gracefo, those are big names that would probably have to be included in the trade. And I think a McClanahan trade only happens if the Rays are that far behind at the deadline.
Yeah.
Um, on the other hand, and this is tough, this is where it gets tough because Shane Bieber and the Guardians have a much better chance of winning the Central than I think the Rays do of winning the East. So if you do go after a Shane Bieber, I think you can get away with maybe like an Alec Burleson headlining the trade.
Hmm.
So you're giving up a top 100 prospect, but it's way later in the top 100. And they're probably going to want some, knowing the Guardians, they want to be contending every year. They're probably going to want some major league ready players in that deal as well. While the Rays, who I think are a team who really value their prospects, I think you could get away with giving up some guys who are a lot younger and not immediately needing to field a big league team.
Yeah.
So I think I was calling this, you're going to get one of the Shanes. That's my
One of the
prediction.
Shanes. I like that.
One of
Both
the
of those guys
Shanes.
would be terrific on that Cardinals team. I would probably say McClanahan is less likely. He's the Rays' ace of the future. He also has a little bit more injury concern, I think, than Bieber does at this point. If
Yeah.
you're wanting to roll with Shane Bieber, on the other hand, though, if the Guardians are in it, that's a different story. They're not moving him. But if the Guardians are not in it, their starting shortstop, Ahmed Rosario, is actually slated to hit free agency this year. And if Bieber is playing really well, I could really see the Guardians asking for Mason Wynn. as a centerpiece, especially with an extra year of control with Shane Bieber. Um,
And you gotta look at Edmund.
yep,
I mean, they'll still have Edmund for a little while, and for some reason, he's still criminally undervalued by experts, in quotes, all across the league. I think that you could get him for a solid deal. So, like I said, I know you don't want to get rid of Mason Wynn, but aces don't just grow on trees.
100%. Both of those guys would fit really well on the Cardinals team.
And one more wrinkle here, and I know this doesn't mean a ton, but the Cardinals have made a lot of trades with both the Rays and the Guardians.
It's true. It's true. The last Rays Cardinals trade didn't really end up so well for the Cardinals, but we'll put that one aside.
Oh, give me a break.
Put it
If
aside.
it's not the World Series, this guy is no better than any one of our three outfielders.
That's true. I wouldn't put him in
I
your
will die
outfield.
on that hill. Honestly, though, I want somebody who doesn't know the Cardinals super well to try to tell me why Randy Arozarena would start over any of the three guys we have.
Yeah, I don't think they
If it's
could.
the World Baseball Classic or the World Series, yeah, suit him up.
Yeah,
But outside of that, he's like league average and everything.
right, right. All right, I got uber specific with my trade deadline prediction. I
Let's hear it.
don't think that the Cubs are going to do anything super splashy this year. I'm also not sold on the third base situation in Chicago. I don't know the moving pieces around this. I don't know if this all depends on if Morel is playing well or not. This is a very low key move, but my prediction is that the Cubs will acquire third baseman Isaac Paredes from the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for Keegan Thompson and Bryce Ball, a first baseman prospect that we have. I think that's a solid return for Tampa. You get a guy who can start or come out of the bullpen. You know how they love to use their pitchers in versatile ways. Keegan's that guy. This trade is almost even on that baseball trade value site if we're going to want to reference that.
Hmm.
But I like this move for the Cubs. Paredes is a good defensive third baseman. He does have a little bit of pop in the bat. I like him with less strikeout numbers than Wisdom at third. And if you're really wanting to hammer in the Cubs' defensive first mindset, having the entire pretty much three-fourths of your infield be defensively minded in Paredes and Swanson and Horner, and then you give Mervis the chance to learn to play first base. Or if you really want to go uber defensive at that point, you put Mancini at first base and you let Mervis DH. So then you have good defense in Mancini, great in Horner, Swanson, and then good in Paredes as well. That's my prediction. I didn't want to go super bold with it because I don't really know what this team's going to do this year, but Paredes seems like a guy that the Cubs would target at the deadline if they're kind of middling around 500, or even if they're above and they want good defensive players for the long run. I think Paredes is a target to look out for this year. Cool. All right. Well, I think that wraps up this episode. Like we said, this is the last technical couple days of spring training. Next episode, we're going to have a ton to talk about with the first couple games with both teams of the regular season. We'll talk about any roster decisions that we found surprising. And yeah, we're both just super excited for this season to get underway. Caleb, you got anything else to talk about before we go?
Nah, man, I'm just super thankful that baseball's here. And once again, I know Aaron says this a lot, but guys, thank you so much for the support and everything. It's been awesome. This is something we've wanted to do for a while, so thank you so much for tuning in when you can. And something else that I posted or I put on a Facebook post when I shared our last podcast was if you don't have the time to sit down and watch the whole thing, we do upload plenty of shorts with kind of highlights throughout the episode. So tune into those if you don't get a chance to watch the whole episode. But
Yeah.
other than that, thank you.
Yeah, this week we'll be cranking them out because we both had pretty busy weeks last week, but we've got a ton from last episode and this episode to put out there. So thank you guys again. We'll have so much to talk about next episode. I'm really excited to get into this podcast and talk about everything that's happening in the world of the actual Major League Baseball season. So until next time, we will see you then. Peace.